Good evening, Val. It is Tuesday, which is probably when I'm just gonna keep posting my videos because I keep not being able to make them by Monday. But Tuesday ends up being okay usually. I just came from my education class, which is one of my first classes that's been really focused on my major, and it's really cool because it's getting me excited about being an ed major and eventually being an English teacher. And we're learning about the history of the education system in America, which I find really interesting because we constantly go back and forth between very rigid study of just our subject matter, like math, science, English, history, and then we swing over to this very progressive ideals of learning things like how to run a household and how to cook and how to do simple personal hygiene things. And we act like it's some big deal that suddenly, oh my gosh, nobody knows how to balance a checkbook, but we all know what the Pythagorean theorem is. And this isn't really a new thing. Like, going back to whenever America, like during the Cold War and all that with Sputnik, we went from a very much of a focus on like home ec and that kind of thing, switching back over to math and science because, oh my gosh, we have to beat the Russians and get up to space as well. And we were pulling people out of the history and other kind of programs and pushing them into the STEM programs because we thought that if we didn't suddenly get in on the space race and make it up to the moon like the Russians did, we'd all become communists. So that's a very simplified version of what was going on, but there's this swinging back and forth, and I think just like about anything else in our lives, we freak out because we're like, oh my gosh, everything is going this way, and then you realize, no, 50 years ago it was still this way, but maybe 25 it was over here, and we kind of get stuck in the middle sometimes, but usually we're over here because nobody knows how to have anything in moderation. But there's also a lot of systematic racism and sexism going on in the past education, which I find really interesting because while, yes, there's no excuse for being racist or sexist, it's been ingrained in the education system for a very long time, and I feel like we're only recently starting to really get out of that. Like going back and looking at different examples in textbooks and that kind of things, there are some horrible things that children were taught about people of different races, and it was just expected that different minority groups were less intelligent, and we had a lot of career tracking where if you didn't do well on the IQ test or the SAT, then you were pushed towards a career in doing things like working with your hands, which isn't bad, but just because you don't do well in one IQ test doesn't mean that your entire career should be determined from there. They had examples of students who there were tons of students who were getting extremely low IQ scores because they were taking them when they were like 5 and being put in special ed programs whenever really there was maybe just a cultural bias that was not in their favor. So that's kind of what I've just been thinking about. I'm sorry that this is just kind of another like brain explosion talking at the camera. I would like to talk more about this whenever I have had the chance to really think it through and process and that whole thing, but I haven't had the chance. I haven't even watched a video yet. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna go watch that and then again make promises that next week's vlog will be more exciting or at least more well thought out. Val, have a good week. Don't forget to be awesome, and I will see you on Friday.